For many centuries, churches were central pillars of communities across Europe and the United States. They were not just places for Sunday worship, they were sources of comfort, guidance, and moral authority. People looked to religious leaders for help during difficult times and for answers to life's biggest questions. The church was a trusted institution, seen as a safe harbor in a changing world. This deep-seated trust was built over generations, with families passing down their faith and their loyalty to their local parish or congregation. The ringing of church bells signaled more than just the time. It was a sound that unified towns and cities, reminding everyone of a shared spiritual heritage and a common set of values that held society together. However, in recent decades, this solid foundation of trust has been shaken to its very core. A series of damaging scandals and deep controversies has erupted, casting a long and dark shadow over these once revered institutions. These problems are not small or isolated incidents. They are widespread issues that have touched some of the largest denominations in the world. The scandals involve terrible crimes and moral failures that are the complete opposite of the values churches claim to uphold. As a result, many people have started to question everything they were taught to believe about their faith and the leaders who guide it. This has led to what many now call a profound crisis of faith, a period of doubt and disillusionment unlike any seen before. This crisis is not limited to one country or one specific church. It is a phenomenon that has spread across the Western world, affecting both the powerful Roman Catholic Church and various Protestant denominations. The stories of scandal have been front-page news, detailing shocking abuses of power and betrayals of sacred trust. From small towns in Ireland to major cities in the United States, the impact has been devastating. Congregations have been torn apart, and believers have been left feeling angry, confused, and abandoned. The very leaders who were supposed to be moral examples have been exposed for committing or covering up terrible acts, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered faith in their wake. In this essay, we will explore the different layers of this complex crisis. We will look at the most significant scandals that have damaged the reputation of churches, from horrific sexual abuse cases to major financial misconduct. We will also examine long-standing debates about the Bible itself, questions about its translation, and the reasons why certain books were included while others were left out. Finally, we will discuss how these issues, combined with cultural and political changes, have contributed to a noticeable decline in church attendance and religious belief in the West. We will also consider what the future might hold for Christianity, a faith that is shrinking in some parts of the world but growing rapidly in others. Perhaps no scandal has caused more pain or done more damage to the church's reputation than the widespread sexual abuse of children by clergy. For decades, these terrible crimes were hidden in the shadows, covered up by church leaders who seemed more concerned with protecting the institution's image than with protecting the innocent. The Catholic Church, in particular, has been at the center of this storm. Reports from countries all over the world, including Ireland, Germany, Australia, and the United States, have revealed a horrifying pattern of abuse and concealment. Priests who abused children were often not reported to the police, but were instead quietly moved from one parish to another, where they were free to harm more victims. This systemic cover-up represents a profound moral failure. The scale of this betrayal is difficult to comprehend. The very people who were entrusted with the spiritual care of children became their tormentors. This was a violation not just of law and morality, but of a sacred trust given to them by families and communities. The recent history of the Church is filled with heartbreaking stories. For example, a 2018 grand jury report in Pennsylvania detailed credible allegations against more than 300 priests, implicating 1,000 child victims over 70 years. In Los Angeles, the Archdiocese paid a staggering $880 million in 2024 to settle claims from over 1,300 survivors. Even high-ranking officials like the late Pope Francis admitted to making grave errors in judgment when handling these cases, further eroding public confidence. The consequences of these scandals have been catastrophic for the Church. Millions of believers have felt a deep sense of anger and disillusionment. How could an institution that preaches about sin and redemption allow such evil to fester within its own walls? The failure of church leaders to act decisively and transparently has led many to conclude that the institution is fundamentally corrupt. The involvement of figures like Cardinal Roger Mahony, who was known to have covered up abuse, in major church events like the rites for Pope Francis in 2025, sends a message that accountability is still not a top priority. This ongoing institutional protectionism has made it very difficult for many people to maintain their faith in the church as a moral guide. This crisis of trust extends far beyond the Catholic Church, as other denominations have also had to confront their own histories of abuse. The pain caused by these scandals is not just a historical problem. It is an ongoing tragedy for the survivors, whose lives have been forever altered. For the Church, it is a wound that may never fully heal. The new Pope, Leo XIV, the first American to hold the office, now faces the immense challenge of restoring the Church's moral authority. To do so, he must go beyond apologies and implement real systemic changes that ensure transparency, accountability, and most importantly, the protection of the most vulnerable members of society. Without these fundamental reforms, the shadow of abuse will continue to loom large over the future of Christianity. Alongside the sexual abuse crisis, financial scandals have also deeply tarnished the image of religious institutions, particularly within the world of American televangelism. Televangelists are preachers who use television to spread their message and, crucially, to ask for donations from their viewers. While many are sincere in their mission, a significant number have been exposed for living incredibly lavish lifestyles funded by the hard-earned money of their faithful followers. These preachers often deliver powerful sermons about the importance of giving and sacrifice, promising that God will bless those who donate generously to their ministries. They create an emotional connection with their audience, many of whom are elderly, poor, or desperate for a miracle in their lives. The hypocrisy of these televangelists has been breathtaking. While their followers sent in their last few dollars, hoping for a spiritual reward, some of these preachers were buying private jets, multi-million-dollar mansions, and luxury cars. Famous cases from the 1980s, like those of Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, became national spectacles. Their PTL, Praise the Lord ministry, collected hundreds of millions of dollars, but collapsed amidst scandals involving fraud and hush money. More recently, other televangelists have faced scrutiny for their opulent lifestyles and a lack of financial transparency. They often run their ministries as family businesses, refusing to disclose how donations are spent, which has led to accusations of greed and exploitation. This kind of financial misconduct creates a serious crisis of faith for many believers. The message of Jesus in the Bible often warns against the love of money and emphasizes humility and service to the poor. When religious leaders are seen living like royalty, it directly contradicts the teachings they claim to represent. This hypocrisy makes people cynical and skeptical about all organized religion. They begin to wonder if the church is truly about serving God, or if it has become just another business designed to make a few people rich. The damage is not just financial, it is spiritual. It poisons the well of trust and makes it difficult for people to believe in the sincerity of any religious leader. The problem is not confined to just a few bad apples. It points to a systemic issue within parts of the Christian world where there is little oversight or accountability. In the United States, religious organizations often enjoy special tax exemptions, and there are few regulations governing how they spend the money they collect. This lack of transparency has allowed a culture of excess to flourish in some corners of evangelical Christianity. For the average person struggling to pay their bills, the sight of a preacher in a designer suit stepping out of a Rolls-Royce is deeply alienating. It reinforces the idea that religion has been corrupted by the very worldly temptations it is supposed to help people overcome, pushing even more people away from the church. The crisis of faith in the modern church is not only fueled by the bad behavior of its leaders, but also by long-standing questions about its foundational text, the Bible. For centuries, the Bible was presented to believers as the infallible and direct Word of God. It was considered a perfect and unchanging source of truth and moral guidance. However, modern scholarship and historical research have raised difficult questions that challenge this traditional view. These questions are not new, but access to information through the internet has made them more widely known, causing many people to wonder about the origins and reliability of the holy book they were taught to revere without question. One of the most significant areas of debate revolves around Bible translation. The Bible was not originally written in English. The Old Testament was written mostly in Hebrew and the New Testament in Greek. Translating ancient languages is an incredibly complex task, and every translation involves interpretation. Critics point to specific verses where a single word choice can dramatically change the meaning. For example, in Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14, the Hebrew word alma, which means young woman, was translated into Greek as parthenos, which means virgin. This translation became a cornerstone of the Christian doctrine of the virgin birth, but some scholars argue it was a mistranslation that created a theological idea not present in the original Hebrew text. Such debates can make people question the accuracy of the entire book. Another major controversy concerns the formation of the biblical canon, the official list of books that are considered part of the Bible. Many people are surprised to learn that there were once many other Gospels and religious texts that were not included in the final version of the New Testament. Books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Judas offer very different perspectives on Jesus and his teachings compared to the 4 official Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These lost books were excluded by early church councils centuries after Jesus lived. The decision to include some books and reject others was made by human beings in positions of power, which leads some to ask, was the canon shaped by divine inspiration or by church politics? These historical and textual questions have contributed to a growing sense of uncertainty among believers. If the Bible has been altered through translation, and if important books were deliberately left out, can it truly be considered the perfect Word of God? For some, these issues are not a problem. They believe that God guided the process of translation and canonization. But for others, especially in an age that values critical thinking and evidence, these controversies can be deeply unsettling. They create cracks in the foundation of faith, leading people to view the Bible not as a divine blueprint, but as a human document with a complex and sometimes messy history. This skepticism makes it harder for the church to claim absolute authority based on its sacred texts. The combination of moral scandals, financial hypocrisy, and biblical controversies has created, well, a perfect storm, resulting in a severe crisis of credibility for churches in Europe and America. Trust, once lost, is incredibly difficult to regain, and these institutions have given people many reasons to be doubtful. When the very leaders who are supposed to embody holiness are exposed for committing or covering up heinous crimes, the entire structure of belief is weakened. This isn't just about a few individuals failing. It reflects a systemic problem where the institution protected itself at the expense of its most vulnerable members. This has left many people feeling that the church has lost its moral compass and can no longer be trusted as a guide for life. This loss of trust is a key reason for the ongoing decline in religious affiliation and church attendance across the Western world. For generations, people went to church not just out of habit, but because they believed it was a place of safety, truth, and genuine community. Now, many see it as a compromised institution, tainted by scandal and hypocrisy. The constant stream of negative headlines has had a cumulative effect, slowly eroding the respect that churches once commanded. People are no longer willing to give religious institutions the benefit of the doubt. Instead, they are voting with their feet, choosing to stay home on Sunday mornings rather than participate in an organization they feel has betrayed their trust. Furthermore, the church's credibility has been damaged by its entanglement with partisan politics. In the United States, for example, a strong association has formed between white evangelical Christianity and conservative political movements. This has alienated a large number of people, especially younger generations, who do not share those political views. When faith becomes more about a political identity than a spiritual journey, it loses its universal appeal. People who are turned off by the political rhetoric may reject the religion altogether, seeing it as just another tool for gaining power. This has made the church appear less like a house of worship for all and more like a private club for a specific political tribe. Ultimately, the decline is not happening because people have suddenly stopped caring about spirituality or meaning. Rather, it is happening because the traditional institutions that once claimed to hold the answers are no longer seen as credible. The scandals have revealed a deep disconnect between the ideals the church preaches and the reality of how it operates. The political alliances have made it seem exclusionary and judgmental. As a result, people are not necessarily abandoning faith itself, but they are abandoning the institutions that they feel have failed them. They are looking for spiritual fulfillment elsewhere, in places where they can find authenticity and integrity without the baggage of scandal and politics. One of the most significant trends in the religious landscape of the West is, honestly, the rapid growth of a group that sociologists call the nones. These are people who, when asked about their religious affiliation, check the box for none. Now, this group does include atheists and agnostics, but actually, the majority are people who simply do not identify with any particular organized religion. In the United States, the percentage of nones has nearly doubled in just over a decade, rising from around 16% in 2007 to about 30% today. This shift is even more pronounced among younger generations, with many millennials and Gen Z members growing up with little to no connection to a church, synagogue, or mosque. The rise of the nones is directly linked to the crises facing organized religion. Many young people have grown up seeing Christianity associated with scandals, political division, and intolerance. They've been exposed to news about the sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church and the financial greed of some televangelists. They've also seen some Christian groups take public stances on social issues that feel exclusionary and judgmental, particularly regarding LGBTQ+ rights. For a generation that highly values authenticity, inclusivity, and social justice, the hypocrisy and perceived intolerance of some religious institutions are major reasons to stay away. They simply do not see the church as a welcoming or relevant place for them. This detachment from organized religion is also fueled by broader cultural changes. In the past, the church was a central hub for community life, social events, and even networking. Today, people have countless other ways to find community and connection, both online and offline. Social media, hobby groups, and volunteer organizations offer a sense of belonging without the dogma or rules associated with traditional religion. Furthermore, in an increasingly scientific and secular world, supernatural explanations for life and the universe are just less persuasive for many. Education and access to information have encouraged critical thinking, leading more people to question the claims made by ancient religious texts and traditions. The departure of young people from the church is not just a temporary trend, it represents a fundamental generational shift. Unlike their parents or grandparents, who may have left the church but still held on to a basic belief in God, many young nones are leaving religion behind entirely. They are not just unchurched, they're increasingly unbelieving. This has profound implications for the future of Christianity in the West. As older, more religious generations pass away, they are being replaced by a generation that is largely secular. Without a new wave of young people to fill the pews, many churches face the prospect of a slow and steady decline into irrelevance. While Christianity appears to be in decline across Europe and North America, the story is completely different in other parts of the world. In what is often called the Global South, a term that includes Africa, Latin America, and parts of Asia, Christianity is not just surviving, it is thriving. The center of gravity for the Christian faith is undergoing a massive geographical shift. A century ago, the vast majority of Christians lived in Europe and North America. Today, the majority live in the Global South. This demographic transformation is, honestly, one of the most important religious stories of our time, showing that the narrative of Christian decline is not a global one. In Africa, for example, the growth of Christianity has been explosive. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were only about 9 million Christians on the entire continent. Today, there are over 700 million. This incredible expansion is visible in the vibrant, packed churches that can be found in cities and villages from Nigeria to Kenya. Similarly, Latin America remains a stronghold of the Christian faith, although there has been a significant shift from Catholicism to Pentecostal and evangelical forms of Christianity. These newer movements are known for their energetic worship, focus on personal experience, and strong sense of community, which has resonated deeply with millions of people. There are several reasons for this dramatic growth in the Global South. In many of these regions, Christianity is a relatively new faith, and it carries the energy and excitement of a new movement, free from the historical baggage and scandals that have plagued the church in the West. Furthermore, the forms of Christianity that are flourishing in the South often speak directly to the daily struggles and spiritual needs of the people. They offer a message of hope, healing, and divine intervention in a world where many face poverty, illness, and political instability. The strong emphasis on community also provides a vital social support network that is often missing in more individualistic Western societies. This global shift has major implications for the future of world Christianity. The leaders, theologians, and voices that will shape the faith in the 21st century are increasingly likely to come from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The recent election of the first American Pope, Leo XIV, follows a period where popes from Argentina and Poland led the Catholic Church, reflecting this changing reality. While the Church in the West grapples with decline and secularization, the Church in the South is full of life and confidence. This creates a tale of two Christianities, one that is old, tired, and struggling for relevance, and another that is young, dynamic, and rapidly expanding. The future of the faith will be defined by how these two worlds interact. Even as traditional churches in the West see their numbers dwindle, faith itself is not disappearing entirely. Instead, it's changing its shape and finding new ways to express itself outside the walls of institutional religion. Many people who have left the formal church are not abandoning their spiritual quests. They are simply looking for more authentic, personal, and flexible ways to practice their faith. This has led to the rise of alternative Christian communities that are very different from the large, hierarchical denominations of the past. These new forms of worship are often smaller, more intimate, and less focused on rigid doctrines or elaborate buildings. One of the most notable trends is the growth of home churches or house churches. These are small groups of believers who meet in each other's living rooms to pray, study the Bible, and support one another. The model is inspired by the earliest Christians who met in homes long before any church buildings were constructed. Home churches offer a deep sense of community and personal connection that is often missing in a large congregation where it is easy to feel anonymous. There are no paid clergy, no formal hierarchy, and no pressure to donate money to maintain a large building. The focus is purely on fellowship and spiritual growth, which, for many, is a refreshing change from institutional religion. In addition to home churches, the digital age has opened up entirely new avenues for spiritual exploration. Online ministries, podcasts, and virtual faith communities are becoming increasingly popular. People can now listen to sermons from theologians around the world, participate in online Bible studies, or find community and social media groups dedicated to discussing faith and spirituality. This allows individuals to tailor their religious experience to their own needs and interests. They can engage with ideas and practices from different traditions without having to commit to a single institution. For those who have been hurt by the church or live in areas with few options, the internet provides a lifeline to a world of faith that is accessible 24/7 from the comfort of their own home. These emerging forms of faith suggest that Christianity in the West may not be dying, but rather deinstitutionalizing. The crisis of credibility has pushed people away from the traditional structures, but it has not extinguished their spiritual hunger. Some are even finding renewed interest in ancient liturgical traditions like Orthodoxy or contemplative Catholicism, which they see as offering more historical depth and less political baggage than modern evangelicalism. The future of faith in the West will likely be much more diverse and decentralized than it was in the past. It will be a landscape of small, nimble communities, online networks, and individual seekers piecing together their own spiritual paths. The Christian church today stands at a crossroads, particularly in the Western world. The weight of devastating scandals, from sexual abuse to financial greed, has shattered the trust of millions and severely damaged its moral authority. Combined with internal debates over the Bible and external pressures from political polarization and cultural change, these crises have pushed the church into a period of steep decline. The emptying pews and the rising number of religiously unaffiliated nones paint a picture of an institution that has lost its central place in society. For many observers, it seems as though the long era of Christendom in Europe and America is finally coming to an end. However, to predict the death of Christianity would be premature. History shows that faith is remarkably resilient and has an incredible capacity for adaptation and renewal. While the old institutional forms of the church may be fading in the West, faith itself is not disappearing. It is being reborn in new and different forms. People are finding spiritual community in living rooms, through podcasts, and in online forums. They are looking for a faith that is more personal, authentic, and disconnected from the power structures that have caused so much harm. This suggests a future not of extinction, but of transformation, where Christianity becomes less of a monolithic institution and more of a decentralized network of diverse communities. Furthermore, The global perspective provides a powerful counter-narrative to the story of decline. While the church shrinks in Europe, it is exploding with life and energy across Africa, Latin America, and Asia. This historic demographic shift ensures that Christianity will remain a major global force for centuries to come, though its character and leadership will be increasingly shaped by the global South. The challenges facing the new Pope, Leo XIV, are immense. He must not only address the deep-seated problems of abuse and corruption in the West, but also guide a church that is becoming more diverse and less Eurocentric every day. His success will depend on his ability to bridge these two different worlds. Ultimately, the future of Christianity is uncertain, but it is far from over. The crises of the present moment could be seen as a painful but necessary purification, forcing the church to confront its deepest failings and rediscover its core message of humility, service, and love. Whether the institution can successfully reform itself remains an open question, but the enduring human quest for meaning, hope, and connection suggests that faith, in one form or another, will continue to evolve and find new ways to flourish. The story of Christianity in the 21st century is still being written, and honestly, it may yet have many surprising chapters ahead.